Hey there, you beautiful badass. Welcome to the Keri Croft Show. I'm your host, Keri Croft, delivering you stories that get you pumped up and feeling like the unstoppable savage that you are. So grab your coffee, put on your game face, and let's do this thing, baby. Ready to elevate your self-care game? Boss Gal Beauty Bar is a modern med spa offering everything from cosmetic injectables, lasers and microneedling, to medical-grade facials and skincare. Conveniently located in Clintonville, Grandview, Powell, and Easton, making self-care a priority has never been easier. Use code CROFT for $25 off your first visit. Let's get real here. Aging isn't always cute. Wrinkles, things sagging where they didn't before. Do I hate my partner or is this perimenopause? I've been there. And that's why I'm all about Donaldson. From plastic surgery to aesthetics to functional medicine, they help you love your body and get to know it better. Want to feel like yourself again? Head to donaldsonhealth.com. And if you're a first-time client, mention the Keri Croft Show for $100 off your first treatment. You're welcome. You're really good at these answers.
No.
No wonder we're doing Ask Amy. My God. I'm like, can I get my notebook out? Well, Amy Nelson, we had to just draw you right back in.
Here I am.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I would say welcome to the Keri Croft Show, but this is Ask Amy. This is Amy Nelson's show.
It's the Keri Croft Show with an Amy appearance.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So the people were picking up what you were putting down. And so what we're going to do now, we're going to do a spot every month, 30 minutes or less. People can call in, they can DM, they can write us. And this is a very highly concentrated, dialed in show about women pivoting in business. Men, you're welcome. You're welcome to come. But
Anyone's welcome. Men
anyone's
can be here.
welcome,
It's
but
fine.
this is just, the Riveter has been, that's what it is, right? Women pivoting in business. So I'm telling you, when you have her here in the hot seat, you better be ringing in the questions. And we do have a bunch of questions, I will say, to start off.
Expert in nothing, opinion in everything.
Hey, listen, that's what we're all about here, right?
Yep.
Question number 1.
All right.
Okay. How do you know when it's time to make a big pivot in your career or business versus just pushing through a tough season?
Ooh, that's a good question. There is no right or wrong answer here. But I think there's kind of two ways to look at it. How long have you had that inkling or that feeling that you want to change? I think it was Steve Jobs actually that said, if you wake up more days in a row than not and say, I need something different, then it's time. So I think you have to kind of constantly be checking in with yourself. Is this what I want, or am I ready to make a pivot? The other way to think about it is far less inspirational and far more tactical. And it's asking yourself not just if you're ready, but can you? Everyone always says, like, live your dreams, chase the passion. Like, that's fucking great, but you can't always do that, right? Because we have a mortgage or rent or kids. And so if you want to make a big pivot, one of the things to do to figure out if you're ready or if you can is to sit down and map it out. Do I have the time to make the pivot? Do I have the financial resources to make the pivot? If the pivot is to another job, great. What's the salary? Is it commensurate to what I'm making now, or am I making more money? If I want to start a company, like, what's my runway, my personal financial runway that I can quit my job, not take a salary, and wait until I ramp up that new business? Because for most businesses on day one, you're not bringing in the money. And so when I started The Riveter, I left 10 years of a career as a lawyer. And at the time, my husband and I sat down and we made a spreadsheet. And the question for us was, how long can we continue to afford full-time childcare and maintain the same standard of living with me, Amy, not making a salary? And I had 19 months. And I decided that that was enough of a runway for me to go for it. And I went for it. And I can tell you that at month 16, I had completely replaced my salary. But the fact that I had that runway and also that goal pushed me toward it even more quickly because I knew I wanted to get there.
See, I was actually going to follow up with, didn't you do a spreadsheet? You fucking took that ball and you just ran with it. What's the biggest mind shift women need to make before taking a big risk in business?
And a lot of people might hate this answer. You need to recognize that imposter syndrome doesn't even exist anywhere but in your own mind. I feel like we have talked about imposter syndrome so much with women that we think it is a real thing. It's completely made up bullshit, right? And I think if we didn't think of such a thing as it existing, we wouldn't even have it. But I think the biggest mindset that women need to have to take a big risk to start a business is to say, I'm standing in this space and I can do it. Like, it's a very simple thing to do, but for some reason we hold ourselves back and we take fewer risks and we have more questions of like, will I fail or can I do this than we see that men have. So just like, don't think that way. Do not allow yourself to think that way. Whenever I doubt myself and I think, it's over some idea or fear, I just tell myself I'm not allowed to think that. One other thing that I think is really important is that I think sometimes we think we are only allowed to try once. And if we fail, it's over. But that's not how the world works. Everyone gets to try again and again and again. Like, no one's kicking you off of life's stage. There are so many entrepreneurs that failed at their first businesses. Sam Altman, who is, taking OpenAI on this rocket ship, his first startup failed spectacularly, right? And what if then he'd said, okay, I'm done. I can't do this. But we as women need to take the same approach. We can fail. We can begin again. It doesn't matter. There are endless chances, and there's room for all of us.
Well, you just answered the third question, which was, how do you deal with imposter syndrome when shifting into a new industry or role?
I mean, I think if you want to say imposter syndrome exists, or if you feel it, this is my best advice for how to deal with it. Say to yourself, what would like a mediocre white man in this role do? Or pretend you're someone else. Like, if you have imposter syndrome, pretend you are the person you feel like you're like pretending to be. Mm-hmm. And how would they approach something? Just do it that way. It might sound crazy, but like, I came to that after I worked on Wall Street for a decade, and I was in these rooms with mostly men. And at a certain point, I started looking around and I was like, these guys don't know anything, or like they're not all that, right? Like, they don't know any more than I do, but they're just taking up the space. And so, although I felt slightly uncomfortable in the moment, I just decided, like, I'm taking up the same space. No one can stop me. And like, I honestly think that's like how I ended up pivoting to start a venture-backed business and raising $30 million and doing these things, because I just decided to take up the space.
Damn, girl. And
I'll say something. I don't have imposter syndrome, but I do get scared, right? I get scared of saying the wrong thing, or I get scared of failing, but it's just like, it's not a useful emotion.
But don't you think that was a muscle that you built, though? So even like you just saying that, you had internal dialogue, you did you did exercises, you talked yourself through it. So it's not like you're just going to wake up one day and be like, okay, I don't have it anymore. Right. But you have to make it a priority to like think it through figure that out.
I mean, you do. Like, it is kind of like, if you think about it, like, you're not going to become stronger if you don't go lift weights, right? Like, you have to make a decision and do that. And I think for me, the practice of getting over these things is a practice of seeing it and framing it differently in my mind. So I used to shake when I had to public speak, and it was my right leg. It would just shake, and it would shake like if I was giving a maid of honor toast, or if I was public speaking for work, and it would shake only if I didn't have a podium. It was like this very specific thing where I felt exposed. If I had a podium, I was fine, no big deal. And I remember when I started The Riveter, I had to get up and give a speech to like the Chamber of Commerce in Seattle. And I was like, fuck, I'm gonna shake, this is embarrassing. And then I had this moment in my head where I was like, you know what? This is my job now. This is part of my job. And I either sink or I swim, and I better figure it out. And then when I realized that this is part of my job, my leg never shook again. And I don't even know if it was I stopped being afraid, but I was like, I have to do this. This is my job.
When you think about who you're speaking in front of, like when there's a bunch of eyes in front of you, of course, it's like, oh my God, everyone's looking at me. But you're like looking out there, you're like, you're all just normal human beings.
Yeah, and the other
they're
thing
all
is,
just, who cares?
Yeah. And the other thing is, if I realize too, when you're looking out at a sea of people, most people in this world do let fear stop them from trying things where they could fail. Whether that's getting up on a stage and giving a speech, starting a business, going for a promotion. And the thing that most people are looking at you for when you are the person on the stage or are the person going out for the promotion, they're looking at you and they're thinking, I wish I could do that. I wish I could be that brave. And like, you're providing inspiration to people. And that's just not something to be afraid of.
I don't mean to beat up the mediocre white male out there. We love you. We love you.
But it's okay. We can beat you up a little bit.
Yeah, but working in corporate America and then managing and being the director, every single person I was in meetings with were men in suits, mostly white. They're taking up the same exact space. Like, look around, compare, pretend, like you said. I love that idea, that visual.
Yeah. I don't know. I remember when you're playing sports as a kid, you'd take stock of the other team, right? You look at them, you figure out who they are, what the players are, and then figure out how you can contribute and win. And I think that we lose sight of that in the world, but I don't think that we should.
What is one unconventional strategy for making a bold career move that most people don't talk about?
I think an unconventional move for making a big pivot is to spend time in the background first, planning the pivot, but not overplan, but like planning the pivot so that you are doing it with confidence. And by that, I mean, like I said earlier, like make sure that you are financially set up to do it yourself, plan your first steps, and also, I think added to this, something that is unconventional and people are afraid to do, ask everybody you know to help you make that move. Enlist your friends, enlist your colleagues, because when you make the move, it will be bigger and bolder if everyone around you is on your supporting team.
Hey, Maria Milligan here with RE/MAX Premier Choice. Being a realtor here means being part of a community. I'm more than just a business card. I'm someone you'll see around town. I build trust with my clients because I care about this community and the people in it. Ready to take that next step? Let's do it together. Text me at 614-314-1355.
Who says you need a special occasion to feel like a celeb? I mean, stress is real. Life is busy. And your scalp? Yeah, it deserves some love too. That's where Headspace by Mia Santiago comes in. Treat yourself or someone who deserves it to a luxurious scalp treatment and a killer blowout or cut, because nothing says main character energy, honey, like a fresh style from celebrity stylist Mia and her team. And because we love a good deal, mention the Keri Croft Show and get 20% off your service or any gift card for somebody in your life that you love. Headspace by Mia Santiago, because great hair days shouldn't be rare. Okay, this is from someone who has spent a lot of time on a personal brand and they want to rebrand themselves, okay? So the question is, how do you rebuild your personal brand when you're pivoting into something completely new? So you already are known for something, you have the brand, but you're really looking to kind of shed that.
I love this question because, first of all, we are allowed to change. Like, you don't have to do the thing you did for 10 years. You can change expertise, you can change your jobs, you can change your personal brand. So my answer might be slightly unconventional, but we live in a world where people want authenticity. Like, if you look at social media now, right? Like, gone are the highly stylized reels. Like, we just want you talking in front of a camera and and seeing what your life is like. And I think to that end, I think there's something really powerful, really vulnerable, and really authentic about taking the community you have built on the journey of your personal rebrand. And by that, I mean, tell your community, I've spent X years talking about sewing. You all have been here with me as we did X, Y, and Z. Now we're going to learn something new together and explain like why you are taking on this new project or talking about this new expertise, and bring your people with you. Right? I mean, we want this. We want change too as your community. We want to see new things, so we're here for it. If you didn't do that and you just one day like rebranded yourself with say you were, Sally, who is an expert in criminal litigation, and then all of a sudden the next day your website is like, I'm Sally, I make pottery, people would be like, what the fuck just happened, right? And so take people with you and they'll be there for it. And you will make new community.
What are some of the biggest mistakes women make when trying to transition into a new business or career path?
We ask for too little. If you are trying to get a promotion or get a new job, the first salary offer is not the best they have, right? Like, it's an opening bid for a negotiation, and you need to ask for more. You need to ask for the farm. So I think that's the first thing, right? Like, we just need to ask for more. And I think that applies like when you are seeking a new job, but it also applies like if you're starting a consulting business or freelancing. Like, whatever you think you should set your prices at, you should probably double it. I mean, that might be a wild amount, but no one's going to pay you more than you ask for. So ask for more. And if it's too much, you can negotiate down. Now, I recently sent out a proposal and it was too much for someone, and so we negotiated down. But like, to their point, like on the reverse side, my opening bid was not the lowest amount I was willing to do it for, but I was going to ask for as much as I thought I was worth. And then I had the decision of whether I want to lower my rates depending on the project, the person, whatever. I have raised a lot of venture capital, and men receive 98% of venture capital dollars. And I think one of the reasons is that we as women just don't ask for as much. So I think that's an important thing. The other thing I'll say about, what we need to do as women when we're starting businesses or pivoting is, not everybody needs to build a $10 million business. You can build an amazing, cash flowing lifestyle business. And I think more and more people are doing that. But I think that we need to set our expectations and goals higher. One of the reasons I think women raise less venture capital is venture capital investors are looking for a massive return. And I think as women, sometimes we're like, shit, I cannot tell this person I'm going to build a $100 million business. Well, yes, you can, right? Like there's no one saying you can't do that. You have to look at things as big as you want them to be or they could be, and then chase that.
When you started The Riveter and you had that moment with your friend or that person who was like, wait, why don't you scale this? Mm-hmm. And before that, you weren't even thinking about that, nor were you thinking about venture capital or how can I do that? However, you ended up raising $30 million. Mm-hmm. So how did you go from that person planting the seed of venture capital, like, what is this VC you speak of, to you actually getting people to give you $30 million? What was in between that?
So I did a lot of research, and I know that might sound uninteresting or not sexy, but here's the thing. We talk ourselves out of doing a lot of things because we're like, I don't know how to do it. It's too hard. I can't figure it out. You can figure out anything in the world. I familiarized myself with the type of capital, because VC capital is just another source of capital. It's one that's mythologized in America, but it shouldn't be, because it's quite expensive capital, actually, in a lot of different ways, because you're giving up your business for it, or parts of your business. But I familiarized myself with what it was, and then I took stock of the landscape. Who's raising VC? And at the time, I was building co-working spaces, and so I looked at other co-working space founders. And like, once again, it's like putting myself in that room in New York City, where I was lawyering, and I was like, I'm not that impressive. I can do this. I can get in this arena. And then I figured out how to tell the story of the business that I wanted to build for that investment class. And by that, I mean, like, if I was applying for an SBA loan, the way I would have told the story of my business would have been the way that you tell it to the SBA. But I was applying for venture capital funding, and so I needed to tell the story of the business that they would want to invest in. And then the last thing that I did was I got the connections that I needed. I think this is the piece that we often overlook. You hear stories now that a job will get 10,000 resumes if you're just applying to a random job online. So what's the answer to that? How do you stand out? I don't think it's by writing a better resume. I think it's by finding warm connections. And that is something that anyone in the world can do. I am a kid who grew up in Columbus, Ohio. My parents are from Columbus, Ohio. And I ended up, getting a job at a top law firm in New York. And how did I do it? By building the right connections. And, here are some ways that I did it with venture capital. You'll be surprised, Keri. I made a spreadsheet. And in my spreadsheet, I identified all of the venture capital investors. I did research and identified all of the VC investors who invested in co-working or in real estate or, in the thing I was building. And then I went on LinkedIn to figure out if I had a direct connection to someone who worked at that VC fund. Now, that was very rare for me because I didn't know a lot of people in the VC world. So then what I did is used LinkedIn's power of the second connection and figured out where I had an intermediate connection that could connect me to someone at a VC fund. After I'd done all the research and had a list of like 100 investors I wanted to reach out to, and I find warm connections to like 75 through a middleman, I then sent emails to all of the middlemen and asked them for coffee or a phone call. I didn't just send them an email saying, hey, can you connect me to Bob? Because they'd be like, why would I connect you to Bob? What's the point? What are we doing here? I needed to sell my intermediate connection on my vision to get them to use their social capital and introduce me, and for them to make the right introduction and make it powerful. Yes, that took a ton of time, but I set myself up for the bold move. I set myself up for the pivot so that by the time I was asking for these introductions, I had my story. I was spending the time with the intermediate person, making them realize I thought they were special. I understood asking for this introduction was a big thing, and I treated it with care and as something precious. And the other thing, when you do something like that and ask for those connections, say you're asking Christy for a connection to Roberta. At the end of the conversation with Christy, if she's willing to introduce you to Roberta, you say to Christy, is there anyone else you think I should meet? And Christy will have like 5 other people you should meet She's now sold on your vision, and she's going to connect you to everybody else. What I did there with venture capital, you can do with finding a job, you can do with finding any kind of funding, you can do with finding clients, right? Like if you're starting out as a freelancer or a consultant, you can do it with launching a podcast. And that single piece of finding the right connections, I think is the most important one.
You just hit it spot on in that it is the most important way to navigate yourself through the intangible network of getting where you need to go. Yeah. But so many people don't understand it.
This is a recommendation I would give to any young person, or if you're older and haven't put yourself in this position, put yourself in a position where you are forced to ask people for things and you're going to hear no a lot. Because you have to get comfortable with that as a life skill if you want to take risks and do big things. You have to be so used to hearing no that you're not afraid of it, that you're used to it, that you know how to deal with it, that you truly understand that no today doesn't mean no tomorrow. I did work in politics, and I raised money, or I door knocked, and I heard no over and over again, and a lot of very rude no's, I'll add. And I got used to it, and it became a very unscary thing to me. And I think that's super important, because when you're learning the art of connection and to do big things, you have to be able to embrace no and not be afraid of it, or otherwise you won't even try.
So what this will also teach you a skill in is, how do I differentiate myself, and how do I win this person over who's probably making $12 an hour, might be, like whatever they're doing, they could give a fuck. How do I make them want to give me information? And so that too, you get creative. Yep. You make sure your looks are dialed in terms of like, don't be wearing raggedy ass shoes and a stained ass coat, walking in like you just rolled out from like some kind of hangover.
Yeah. And also, and I think it's really important in this like very remote world we live in, learn how to do this shit in person. Like, you aren't going to build these very deep relationships online. Some you will. I mean, you'll meet some people online and become close and build business relationships. But a lot of this is like earned trust from face-to-face time, right? And people getting to know you in person. My good friend Susan McPherson wrote this amazing book called The Lost Art of Connection, and it's so good. She is one of the most brilliant, authentic connectors I've ever met in the world, and she's just so genuine. And this book it's a great book to read, to kind of get an overview more of what we're talking about.
Yeah. Last question of the day.
All right.
If your pivot fails, how do you pick yourself back up and reframe it?
I always find inspiration in looking at other people's failures. I know that might sound terrible, and I'm not looking at like the person on the corner, their failure. I look at the stories of the greats who have failed, right? Everything from, the story you hear that Michael Jordan used to tell. He missed half or more than half of his shots, right? But he's still the greatest ever. Or Kobe, And so I think, looking at it from that perspective. And then also, sit down and make a list, not a spreadsheet, but a list of what you learned, of what you did a great job at, of what you did a really bad job at, and like what you liked and what you didn't like. The Riveter, we started out by building co-working spaces, and I took on a lot of investment. I had a lot of employees, and we had a black swan happen in March of 2020 where we were no longer allowed to legally operate our spaces. And so that part of my business, it failed. And I have since then really sat down and thought about what I was good at, what I was bad at, what I liked, what I didn't like. And I use that to inform all of my next choices. Like, I don't want to manage a team of 130 people ever again. I'm not good at it, right? I'm good at a lot of other things. I'm not good at it. Also, I didn't like it. And it's not something I want to learn how to do. Does that mean I would never start a company with 100 people? No, but it means if I did, I would start it with a partner who loved operations and people management. So you can take what you learned and apply it to your next endeavor. And again, like, always go back. There's Kobe. There's like Abraham Lincoln lost every election ever until he, became a national politician. And if he had quit after losing the first one, what a loss for the rest of us.
You're just, packed with inspiration, no bullshit knowledge per usual. And sitting here for this first inaugural Ask Amy just makes me that much more bullish about the fact that we should be doing this.
It's fun. I love it.
If you're still out there following your girl, follow me on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, Ask Amy is going to be a monthly drop. It's a half hour only. We're eventually going to have a call-in option for you. But until then, DM or email me at Keri@thekericroftshow.com and ask your questions to Amy. And keep moving, baby.